Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I'm your host, Phil Bakke. Tonight, I'm joined by Mikka Burrell. Mikka, how we doing?
Doing well. It's April. It's like mid-April. Where's the time going? It's getting hot in El Paso. So yeah, no, all things considered, pretty good.
Going to be trading windy conditions at the SWUP for muggy and hot conditions at the SWUP on those evening kickoffs.
Hydration breaks, yeah. Absolutely.
And we're joined also by Christian Canales. Christian, welcome. How's it going, man?
Going good. Yeah, that heat is catching me out. The air conditioner turned on in the middle of the night, and I was like, what is that? I woke up startled. So what is that noise? Who's breaking into my house? Because I had not heard that noise in probably about 6 or 7 months. So
well, yeah, we'll be I guess, I don't know, it's warming up out this way too, but certainly not in the same manner that it is out in El Paso.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be like 90 tomorrow or 89. So
no, it's too early for that. Well, I guess in the manner of getting started, and just making sure that we cover some admin. Just want to say, we are Seriously Loco, and if you're into El Paso Locomotive or the USL Championship, you could certainly give us a follow, subscription, whatever your favorite podcast platform provides in terms of delivering new episodes to you. And then you can find us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram primarily, but you can pretty much find us anywhere, and you can find us for watch parties and stuff on like Twitch, YouTube, and those are for all the away games, where we provide some alternate commentary. Speaking of commentary, did want to give some well wishes to Duke Keith, who was out of the last broadcast, just dealing with some health stuff, but seems like Duke is up and at him, very active on Twitter still, which was great to see during the match. But Colin Deaver, who is his first year in the booth. Those will know him from KTSM. He's been doing his thing as the analyst alongside Duke this year so far, with Locomotive. Took over solo commentary duties, which I think any of us know, solo not easy. And Colin handled it really, really well, it seemed.
He was outstanding, like genuinely really, really good. Because I watched some of the game back to prep for this podcast. Obviously, I was there live, so I couldn't hear him during the game. But yeah, I watched it afterwards, and like he's a complete natural. So, attaboy Colin. Obviously, we'd love to see Duke back because their chemistry together is amazing. But just standing in for him, he was fantastic.
Yeah, this is absolutely no shade to anyone who's been in the booth before, but Colin, Duke, and then Rachel on the sideline is the best commentary and like analysis team that we've had so far in the short history of Locomotive. So glad to see they've landed on something that, I mean, to me, this is a formula that absolutely works, and like how lucky Locomotive are to be able to throw it to their brand new analyst or color commentator to do play-by-play and have him not handle it so smoothly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, obviously our best wishes to Duke. We hope to see you back at the next home game, and sure, he won't miss a beat, but just want to make sure that he's feeling 100% before he comes back. The squad not the only one impacted by fitness and and injury problems, throughout the season. So best of luck, Duke, with everything going on, and we hope to see you back soon. Well, obviously, we're going to spend the bulk of today's episode talking about the win, the 1-0 win by Locomotive at the SWUP over Orange County. We'll talk a little bit about the U.S. Open Cup disappointment and Mikka's trip out to Omaha. And then we could talk about a little bit more general squad talk, because the squad gets a little bit of a break leading up to Pittsburgh in a couple of weeks. So yeah, so that is essentially how we'll spend things. But before we get to all that, we got to start things as we always do with Christian's question. So Christian, take it away.
Yeah, guys, it's April now, so that means baseball season is in full swing, pun intended. So I was wondering, what are your guys' go-to concession grabs at a ball game?
Phil,
I
you're the bigger baseball fan, so I'm interested.
I I have a habit. I judge every stadium I go to by what either hot dog, sausage, bratwurst, whatever they've got. That's where I'm drawing the line. I know one of my favorite things to do at Southwest University Park was the Juarez dogs, like those stands, not just the your typical concession, but going to the next level. That was always a big stop for me. But yeah, there's something about ballpark hot dog. Like I've always got to judge the availability of whether when you're in the Midwest, a lot of places will have like brats, like that sort of vibe. Growing up, Kane County Cougars, which was a single A team outside of Chicago, they had legit grills actually out there, just open air, and they were just grilling
nice.
bratwurst, Polish sausage, like the whole nine, with the fresh grilled vegetables and all that stuff, peppers and onions and everything, delicious. So that is for me, I just immediately associate a day out at the ballpark with a hot dog or a sausage.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, you cannot go wrong with a hot dog. I mean, I definitely reach for that if I don't know what I want. Just mustard on it is completely fine with me. I am a New York Mets fan. I don't get to go to Citi Field that often, but I did when I was in college because I was going to school in Queens. And one thing I love about Citi Field is that the concessions there are very New York. And one concession in particular is called Arancini Brothers. And arancini is risotto balls. Like they are a Sicilian street food. I don't know that any other
love
park.
arancini.
Yeah, I don't know that any other park offers something like that. So I just love that about Citi Field. And just all the other stuff they have. They have like pastrami on rye and like all the classics too, like the peppers and sausage, the hot dogs, stuff like that. But I just love that they've got all that like Italian American goodness as well. Very New York Mets, very Queens. So yeah.
I love that. My only trip to Citi Field, I got Shake Shack, like a basic
Hey,
ass.
Shake Shack is absolutely fine, man. Not a bad choice.
I do the Mets concessions were good. That was, yeah, Citi Field was a really good experience, I will say.
I love Citi Field. I love our orange foul poles.
So Christian, what about you?
So, probably the most attended like baseball stadium I've ever went to was in San Antonio. They have a AAA team, the Missions, who I believe are with the Padres. So they're not AAA, they're AA. Sorry,
AA, yeah.
And they feed up to El Paso. Actually, I know they were for a long time, and then they moved to Milwaukee. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what the situation is. But yeah, so it was kind of a funny connection that between here and San Antonio for me. But I love like lower league baseball because in San Antonio, what Martha and I would do was we would get Groupons, and it was like 10 box seat tickets for $10.
Oh, nice.
So, and they were just like vouchers though, so you would just have to like show up and give them the voucher, and they'd give you whatever box seat. But they were never like sold out or anything, so we'd constantly sit like right behind home plate, which was fantastic. But all that being said, if it's like a 50-cent hot dog night like they would have there, you can catch me eating like 10 of those. But like just the basic concession hot dogs. because I'm nothing if not like frugal and cheap. So you can catch me eating that, or if not, I'm just like a seeds guy. Like I can down like 3 bags of seeds during a game. So
I actually
I'm
have
pretty simple.
I have a funny like lower league baseball adjacent story from my trip to Omaha. I might have told you guys this in the chat, but I'll tell the listeners. So and we'll get on to this in the second part of the show, and I'll talk the actual soccer. But I went out to Omaha to watch Locomotive play Union Omaha in the U.S. Open Cup, and I was just absolutely amazed by Union Omaha's announcer. Like, he would just turn on the radio voice like without any warning and get on the tannoy and start doing his announcements. But I guess they share a facility, or at least play. I'm not actually sure, but the Omaha Storm Chasers are a AAA team there, and I guess they're having a series against the Gwinnett Stripers. Well, he gets on the tannoy and he's like, "Make sure to purchase your tickets for the Gwinnett Strippers." And, like, just deadpan says it like that, and then he stops, and then they're like, "What did you just say?" And he's like, "I don't know. You guys don't pay me to proofread this stuff. You pay me to just read it." He said Gwinnett Strippers with his entire chest.
The strippers.
But it's the stripers, as in like striped bass. I think that's
it's a fish.
It's a fish, but he said Gwinnett Strippers with all his chest. And
that's
if he's listening to this, I'm sorry for repeating it, but it was hilarious.
The good people of Gwinnett. I believe that's Georgia.
Yeah, that is Georgia.
Yeah, the good people of Gwinnett.
To be fair, there likely are strippers located there, but I don't think that's the name of the baseball team. So
there's some wild minor league baseball team names. That is not one of them. Yet. Yeah. Crazy cross promotions inbound in Gwinnett, Georgia. Oh man. No, I like that question. And I mean, baseball is like currently going on. The Cubs are actually playing right now against the Mariners, and they just gave up a run in the top of the ninth, so that it looks like that one might be headed to extras. We'll see what happened, but anyways.
We're about to get review bombed.
Yeah. So, the Seriously Loco match review. So, guys, I mean, Locomotive get a 1-0 win at home. First home win of the season. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. Second win of the season, I guess. But yeah, first home win of the season. 1-0 against Orange County. It is the return to Southwest University Park for Andrew Fox, and on the losing end, luckily, although it was nice to see Andrew in action. Eric Calvillo obviously coming up against his old team as well. In terms of general impressions of this one, guys, I mean, this 1-0, great result in terms of, I think we're at a point this season where any result is a good result. A 1-0 at home is completely fine. Clean sheet. A lot of good things. 1-0 probably doesn't tell the whole story of this game, though. It could have been more on both sides.
Yeah, 1-0 is... I mean, I said to y'all before the game that I'd do unspeakable things for a 1-0. Luckily, I've not been called on that yet. But, yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think this really tells a story. There were a lot of momentum swings, a lot of last-ditch defending, a lot of penalty shouts, maybe. I mean, there could have been a lot more goals in this one. And I think once we opened the scoring in the 20th minute, that's when Orange County really started to come out of their shell, which I thought was interesting because I don't know if they were playing for a 0-0 or something. Like, it was kind of an interesting approach because we've seen other teams rock up to the SWUP and go for it, try to score that first goal, and then preserve their lead. Doesn't always work out that way, but I think that's what a lot of away teams have tried to do against us. So Orange County was a different proposition entirely. But yeah, it could have been like 6-2 or something ridiculous if finishing is better, or if the post has just a little bit less paint on it for some of the chances. But 1-0, I'll absolutely take it. I mean, get the win, get the clean sheet, get the 3 points, get the monkey off your back of not having one at home yet. And yeah, hard to complain, really.
Yeah, the most like the best overall performance that we've put in so far this season. Did OC have chances? Yeah, for sure. But I mean, there wasn't a particular phase of play, a significant phase of play where I could say, we weren't the better team for that 15 minutes, that 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was really strong. I think this game built on a lot of the positives that we've seen, and we'll talk a little bit more in some of the listener questions that we got about just kind of where Locomotive is trending and which the direction we see things moving. In starting the discussion about the game, the starting 11, pretty. It's starting to get pretty familiar in terms of the lineup that Locomotive put out. Benny Diaz, obviously in goal. And then we had Miles Lyons standing in for Mark Navarro. Again, we'll maybe talk a little bit about that. Bense and Yuma partnering in central defense as is expected. And we saw Eder Borelli start again on the left side of the defense. Kostishin and Petrovic resume their roles in the attacking midfield and wing play areas with Liam Rose and Eric Calvillo there in the center of midfield, that double pivot that we've come to know. Lucho and Zacharias start up top. So no big surprises here. The one kind of main, I guess, talking point here is we do see Miles Lyons again at right back for Mark Navarro. Mark, notorious a little bit for his injury record at his previous clubs, and really the thing that held him back from maybe being more of an impact player at Espanyol or Watford during his time there. It seemed like one of those things, it's a minor knock after Louisville. It's now 3 games in a row that he's missed between the Open Cup, sandwiched between the last 2 USL games. How concerned should we be about Mark Navarro missing out on another match here?
I think it's easier to deal with your concern when you win, right? And I think Miles Lyons has been good. We didn't get to talk about Tulsa right after because it's been so ridiculous as far as the schedule is concerned. But I think he had some really bright moments against Tulsa as well, and some poor ones, actually. I think he is culpable for the equalizer in some respects. So a young player that is going to have those moments. I think against Orange County he was good, and he's got the faith of the manager. Clearly, Brian rates him highly. He's what I understand to be a club favorite, actually. The front office are very high on him, whether that's because they think maybe he's a potential Diego Luna-like sale maybe in the future, something like that. I'm not sure, but I just do know that he's very well liked further up the hierarchy. But as far as Mark is concerned, I think from what we're hearing, it's unlikely that he comes back against Pittsburgh, which is kind of a shock because that game is 2 weeks away. So you'd think that, that would give him some time to heal up. It's a hamstring issue as far as we know. And he is still going to the gym and working out, but I don't know that he's necessarily working with the ball yet. That I'm not sure of. So yeah, it's a concern, especially when, the last time out he opened the scoring and was really, starting to find his groove in this Locomotive side, and clearly one of the most technically gifted players that we have, I think. And obviously big pedigree, big resume. We talk about it all the time. So yeah, it's tough, but at the same time, results have been okay without him. The U.S. Open Cup notwithstanding.
Yeah, and I think for me, from a different perspective, I feel from a I guess I don't know if business perspective is the right way to do it, but it's frustrating too because you have to imagine he's commanding one of the higher salaries on the roster, and for him to go on to what's going to be at least 4 matches now is a big deal, and that's hard because I think it's fair to say that the roster could be deeper, And so I don't. I mean, I'm speculating on figures, but you have to imagine that's at least two quality like USL level players that you could bring in for whatever we're probably paying him. Again, that's purely speculative, but I think it's a fair guess. So frustrating for sure that he's having to miss all this time. Obviously, if he's hurt, he's hurt. I'm not saying that he should go out there and play through his injury, but it's frustrating that it is the case.
Yeah, I think like you said, Mikka, it's softened by the result. It's softened by the fact that Miles Lyons has looked comfortable in the minutes that he's gotten. Largely, I'll say it, like and against OC he did look good. I think we're gonna run into this a little bit with Miles Lyons, and maybe it's because I'm a Liverpool fan and I'm very close to the whole Trent Alexander-Arnold like right back situation of his instruction is to get pretty far upfield, so there are going to be these moments as OC had during the first half where they get in behind like as a result of these counterattacks, and so trying to separate the player from the system, if you will, of being like Miles isn't necessarily leading to chances being created, but the system does a little bit in the first half, and we can talk more about that, but all in all, especially in this match, I think Miles put in a pretty good shift, and so it does soften the blow. To Christian's point, the odd thing with this Locomotive roster is you look to the chair the chair next to Miles, if you will, of like who comes in the case of an injury. We had a complete crisis at right back last year, and we're one Miles Lyons injury away from not having a right back like in the team.
Well, Artem Holod is ostensibly that guy, but he comes on in Omaha, kind of has a disaster in a very short amount of time, and is immediately out of the team again. Like everyone makes the bench but him. So I think that says a lot, but no, fair enough.
So as it played out, like you said, up until the Lucho goal, I think I even said it in the group chat during the game, but just like Locomotive pretty much on top. Like it felt quite comfortable for Locomotive at the beginning of the game. It like things were progressing. They were creating some chances, not anything like really clear cut. And then they earn a corner. Corner comes in, it's half cleared, comes to Yuma, who tries the wildest speculative hit that I've ever seen. Like it was, as soon as he was lining up for the shot, I was like yelling at my TV, like, Yuma, what are you doing? And it turns into a brilliant assist because it lands right at the feet of the unmarked Lucho Solignac, who on the turn might be one of the most dangerous, like, well, no, I'll just say on the turn is the most dangerous forward in USL.
Yeah, he's so good at that finish, that like facing away from goal, I'm going to contort my body to get this into the far corner finish. Like he's done it several times over the years, and it's a great finish. I assume by you yelling at the TV, Phil, that meant you thought Yuma didn't mean that pass. So
do we think that Yuma meant that pass?
No, I don't. I do think I will say, like, it looks like we're trying to like actively be better on the second phase, because that is where a lot of goals are scored in USL. Sure. So I will give credit for that, of like keeping the ball in play. But yeah, he probably didn't mean the pass. But that's the wonderful thing about Lucho Solignac, is like he will still take that chance even though he's not expecting the ball to fall to him there. And Orange County's defending is really poor here because he's alone, and I think that's a massive mistake. And I think USL Tactics actually highlighted that in his kind of overview of this performance. And so, I mean, yeah, they'll be looking at that, furious at themselves, I think, leaving Lucho Solignac out there by himself to beat Cropper. So
set pieces were a little bit of an avenue for Locomotive in this one, and it seemed like a couple of times. I don't know if it's meant, and maybe we'll talk about Petar Petrovic here in a little bit, but they didn't include it in the match highlights, but they have to make a save from a Petrovic corner at one point in the second half where he almost scores another Olympico, which he almost scored one at Louisville, I think, as well.
I think that's right. Yeah, he bends that. And then Kostishin tried something similar too. I mean, they were trying like some cheeky stuff off dead ball situations, which by all means, like some of these USL keepers can be got at that way. So might as well try it.
As you said, Mikka, in the course of the game, like after the goal, so Locomotive take the lead 19 minutes in, Lucho scoring again, and we'll talk more about how his form has obviously ignited over the last couple of games. But Christian, after that, it was kind of OC's time, I guess, in terms of they did create some really quality chances on the break. And there are a couple of moments here where Locomotive, maybe through a combination of luck and some great goalkeeping and defending, are able to keep it blank. But this felt a little different from past performances in that they were able to keep that resilience rather than immediately conceding from the first good chance.
Yeah, like I said, it's hard to tell if we just had a lucky night, but for sure, I mean, I think there's two instances that we could talk about for that. You know, at one point, Nielsen is 1-on-1 with Benny Diaz, and you know, we just get lucky that he just mishits it. I don't even think Diaz makes a save on it. Maybe he does.
Yeah, it's just off target. Hits like the outside of the post.
Yeah, so again, luck, because that should absolutely go in the net from those circumstances. And then, you know, of course, that moment, I guess, I don't know what else to call it, that Eric Calvillo comes to save the day after a good save from Benny too. You know, so that's one of those chances that we talked about, how this scoreline could be much different either way. But yeah, we can talk more about that Calvillo moment if you want to.
That scramble, Mikka, I mean, there's a couple of moments where there's like phases of emotions that I'm feeling as this plays out. I think Bense is about to concede a penalty, like right on the edge of the box. I think Yuma is about to concede a penalty as the ball bounces out. And as a shot comes in, I'm thinking that's going in the corner. Benny saves it. And then I'm thinking easy headed goal, and Eric Calvillo heads it off the line. I mean, just a wave of moments in basically a couple of seconds in this match, but end up being probably the biggest like sequence of the match in terms of it is as good as scoring a goal for Locomotive in keeping them from scoring in from that situation.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, and I guess fair play to Orange County for not like they could have gone down in some of these challenges, and
for sure.
I'm trying to remember who it was that had the shot, because it was a wicked shot that I think it was Bryce Jameson, I believe.
Yeah, it was
who,
Jameson.
like, whipped it at Benny Diaz, and then who is it? I think it's Iloski who gets on the header at the far post, and then that's when Eric Calvillo.
Yeah, I believe so.
Eric Calvillo has to clear off the line, and Eric, I think Christian actually asked Eric about it after the game, and he was like, you know, like a lot of it was luck. Like I was just running back, I see the goal is open, I'm trying to just sprint back to the space, and I mean, yeah, it just the stars aligned, I guess. Because Yuma and Bense absolutely could have given away penalties, and just the finishing from Orange County wasn't there. But yeah, this just crazy, and that's happening right in the like eighth notch end, I'll call it. So that's also right in front of the press box. And I don't think I breathed for like 10 whole seconds. So
yeah, I was like, I had to go to the bathroom like prior to that. And I was very close to no longer having to go to the bathroom as it was happening.
And that sequence, or that, I guess, those few minutes of the game where Orange County were really threatening, because you have the Nielsen chance, you have that goalmouth scramble, and then I think it's after that you have the attempted hand of God by Nielsen when he tried to swat the ball into Benny Diaz's net, where I thought Benny made a third incredible save, but in actuality it was just the two big chances for Orange County, because that was rightly ruled a handball, and a deliberate handball. But in that sequence, like, we were seeing, I guess, the sort of, I don't want to say typical vulnerabilities, because I don't know if that's like overly harsh, but we were seeing the sort of vulnerabilities from Locomotive in Orange County being able to play in behind that we have either last year or like at times, early this season. It had started to creep back in after we got the opener. Maybe the message from this game is that as soon as the second half kicks off, like, those chances have completely evaporated. So was there something that Brian was able to do where, I mean, they really cut out a lot of Orange County's threat after halftime, having had those few scares in the first half?
Actually, yeah, absolutely. I think this is a game where Brian really showed his tactical chops, because the first kind of narrative or line of questioning that he answered in the press conference after the game was addressing Bense and Miles Lyons both being on yellow cards. That's our entire right half, and Orange County were absolutely spamming the ball into that area. And Brian basically described how he said, you know what, this is just meat and potatoes to them. Like, they're going to keep doing this, so let's just drop our forwards a little bit. Let's, like, reel the line back a little bit. And they completely ran out of ideas after that adjustment from Brian Clarhaut. So absolutely is the answer. And I think less savvy players, or less savvily managed players, if you could say, would maybe have gotten another yellow card on that side or something. But I just love that Brian was able to identify the issue and protect his players through his tactics. So yeah, once Orange County couldn't spam the ball into that area and get in behind as easily, they really didn't have a whole lot of ideas. Whereas I looked at some more like advanced metrics in preparation for this podcast. We were actually attacking in a lot more varied ways than we have done in other games. I mean, I think we've really tried to force the ball through that right side to Kostishin, but Petrovic is coming into his own now, scored that goal in Louisville, did wonders for his confidence, I'm sure. Eric Calvillo and Liam Rose, their understanding is getting better and better by the game. And so, like, the ball is moving in different areas more often. And we're finding kind of, like, attacking moves in different parts. And I think actually in this game it's like pretty even, like 33%, like roundabouts of like where we attacked from, left, right, and center. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, like a bit of a tactical masterclass from Brian Clarhaut, if I'm being honest, because I think last season we wouldn't have seen that problem addressed at halftime, to be fair. So
you mentioned the midfield, and I was really encouraged to see the positive performance against Tulsa, like we talked about I talked about in the tactical takeaways piece on Tulsa, about the improvement and that improved understanding seemingly between Liam Rose and Eric Calvillo, and their ability to make those kind of snap decisions about, am I going forward? Am I dropping back? Am I playing this a more attacking pass? Am I playing a safer pass? Like, those sorts of things have really improved since Tulsa. Like, I think Tulsa signaled, hey, they're turning a corner. This kind of cemented for me that pair in midfield is really figuring it out in terms of like how they are supposed to operate together, how they're supposed to operate with the other parts of the team. So yeah, that was fantastic to see. You mentioned the variance in attacking, but the tactical changes around defending. I wanted to say, from the off, like neutralizing Milanolowski will have been like what they put on the whiteboard, all week after they got back from Omaha. I'm sure like it was just don't let him hurt us. And I mean, it does speak to how effectively this coaching staff game plans, because Olowski, not only was he neutralized in the sense that he doesn't get on the score sheet, he is the lowest rated player by FOTMob's like rating system of any of the players that played. He only gets 23 touches of the ball. Only one attempted dribble, none successful. He's 2 for 4 on crossing, and only takes 3 shots, only one of which hits the target, and another which is blocked. So, only won 38% of his duels. Like he was like absolutely hounded all game. And to me, this is the second kind of like big player, first being Cameron Lancaster at Louisville, now Milanolowski, like where in a win, Locomotive have effectively like marked the biggest threat of the opposition out of the game.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's big because especially consider, he played all 90 minutes too, so like they couldn't switch off. Defensively, Locomotive couldn't switch off because, I mean, he was out there all 90 minutes, and so to do that for a full match is a big credit to them, and I think it's going to be a key part of, any continued success Locomotive has, because there's only, a couple of teams in the league that probably have sincere multiple threats. I think most teams you can beat if you can successfely blanket their star offensive player, and so to be able to do that, consecutively, or not consecutively, but repeatedly against some big names in the league is a huge credit to the team.
The at our end, or at our goal scoring end, obviously we talked about the 1-0, maybe not telling the whole story. There's a chance in here in the second half for Lucho where he goes one-on-one with the keeper. And I mean, there's really not many forwards in the league that you would want in that position over Lucho. But Mikka maybe overthinks it a little bit. He gives the keeper the eyes, tries to go to the near post, and just drags it a little wide.
It's a poor decision. It really is. And it's such a different chance from the one that he scored earlier, which was so like instinctive and just knowing where the goal is because you're not facing it, so you have to know. This one, he's got all the time in the world, dribbles, he's clean through, like you said, picks the near post when he should have just gone across the keeper, really, and curled it. I don't know why he does this.
R1 circle, like we've seen it a million times.
That's all you need to do. Just finesse it. Like, it's so easy on FIFA, Lucho. Why can't you? No. It's, not a great decision. He absolutely has to score there. Those kind of chances are not going to come very often, especially not against, quite frankly, better teams than Orange County. So yeah, that's disappointing, and it just squeaks ever so slightly wide. I don't know that it's necessarily like, I don't know that it's even really like, I don't know. I guess the time, I guess it could have messed with Cropper's timing if it was actually on target, because it is kind of like rolling, but it's just not the strongest shot ever. And again, the placement is just not the right decision. So Lucho knows it. I'm sure Brian will have a word with him, but I mean, it's 3 goals in his last 2. Like, it's hard to give him too much grief, but 4 goals in the last 2 would have been better. Just saying.
Yeah, and one of the things that Brian talked about is how like he is like 1-0 is not comfortable for him, especially considering how things have gone so far this season. So he'll definitely have been wishing that one went in too. Especially like Pater's goal that we'll talk about is it is what it is. That would have just been a fantastic finish. So. Nothing he can really do about that. But this one, man, you just gotta have that one. Got to.
Well, let's talk about Petar. So I mean, he played out on the wing. He actually ends up creating the most chances on the night. Although Dennis Castician gets the accolades of being the highest rated player according to FOTMob, but which was interesting given the fact that like I did feel like Castician was quieter than maybe normal. Like he does take a few shots, like tests the keeper a couple of times. Has the free kick that is saved, which would have been box office obviously if he beats Croppers at the near post. But Petrovic putting in a lot of work out on the wing, and obviously like I was saying he creates the most chances, but almost puts the exclamation point on the performance with a late goal. And Mikka, as he said, you know, a thin coat of paint away from that going in off the post. Instead, it hits the post and comes square, just like straight back out. So agonizing for Petar. But we did get a question from at AlexMedic7. Those of you who know will know the Banana Man. But he asked us on Instagram. He said on Instagram, I think Petar is going to explode on the scene soon. I feel at times he's just unlucky, but you can see he's a great talent. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about how Petar's introduction out there on that left wing has seemingly added a little bit of danger to Locomotive's attack. He's obviously got his goal already in Louisville, but what do we think about Petar? Is he due for even more, I guess, contribution at the attacking end?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's another one of those players that has a history of well, maybe not a history, but like he's had a major injury in the recent past. So that's always something to keep an eye on, of course. But I mean, he's someone that Brian's extremely high on and really convinced him to come join him in USL Championship because he played against him so much in Sweden, where he's scored loads, I should say. And, you know, in Louisville, he announced himself and kind of showed the league how predatory he can be with one little mistake, and scored a great goal there at the Lynn Family Stadium. Yeah, he's a very exciting player for sure. I do agree with the Banana Man. He's going to explode, I think. I think at some point goals will start raining in for him as long as he keeps getting into those positions. I think the only thing that would stop him, or two things really, is a knock of some sort, or if we see what Orange County did to him, which was to put 2 or 3 guys on him at all times. I mean, he has to go past 2 people to get that close to the goal line to try and smash it across and it comes off the post. So, I mean, you know, it's only been 7 games and already people are taking notice of Petrovic and marking him very closely. Like I said, 3 guys at some points, sometimes just 2, but he was still finding his way through because his close control is just elite for this level.
Yeah.
So yeah, very exciting player. You always feel like something's going to happen, or at least has the potential to when he's on the ball. But yeah, I have to agree with the Banana Man. He will explode eventually if he can keep getting selected and staying healthy.
Well, and Christian, I mean, you mentioned earlier just like how certain USL teams struggle when their like main guy gets marked out of the game or something like that. And in the attacking, you know, third of the field, a lot of teams do rely on like a volume goal scorer or someone to really like lead the line. Obviously, Locomotive looked much better when Lucho Solignac's in the team, but it does feel nice to have a depth of attacking options when you've got the likes of Lucho, Gomez, Zacharias, Castician, Petrovic, Sinupe. Like, it does feel like Locomotive's got options to hurt teams. When one guy isn't firing, another one can step up.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, like that's not to say that, you know, Locomotive don't have quality guys. I'm talking about like those marquee names. And if you think about it, like last year, I think one of our big problems is that besides Lucho, we were struggling for goals. And so last year was like the most difficult year in our history. And so when you compare it to like those first 3 Lowry years, or our best years, specifically like the year 3, you know, that was a year where those goals were coming from all over the place, and I think that that's directly correlated to when you don't have that, when you don't know defensively who to key on, and you have multiple players who are not like gonna score those bangers every week, are not going to win a golden boot ever, but there you can still count on them, you know, for a goal every third game or something, and you have 4 or 5 of those, then that's what has made Locomotive historically such a difficult team to defend.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I think hopefully hopefully we can continue to spread the love in the attacking third and keep because what is it? I think Diego Luna ends last season as our 3rd top goal scorer, even though he only played like half the year or whatever.
Oh man.
So anyways, Mikka, I mean, it would not be a USL match day, or in fact any sort of soccer these days, without some refereeing controversy. This one, there was a couple of moments for Locomotive where maybe it seemed like they should have been awarded a penalty. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the clearest one comes pretty early on for Locomotive, where there's just a clear. Is it Lyons who gets caught? Or I think it might be Miles Lyons. Someone gets absolutely like just wiped out in the box, and it's waved off. But yeah, I mean, this, like you said, you know, could have gone way differently, and the referee may be at the center of some of the reasons that it did remain 1-0.
Yeah, look, I missed the first penalty shout because I was like live tweeting or doing something, so I missed it. The second one I did see, where Petar Petrovic gets a nick in the area and he goes down. I do think it's a foul. I think what the referee wasn't having was that like Petar kind of like arches his back in that way of like, look at me fall type thing.
Right.
Some might call it a dive. But Brian Clarhaut was very adamant that it was 2 penalties, and that in fact there was also a penalty in Tulsa. And he's got the video, you know, him and John are cutting that stuff up and watching it very closely. And apparently not getting much sleep while doing it. But yeah, he's got the video. He's adamant that it's a penalty, and I have to take that at face value and say, yeah, probably was, because with the amount of box entries that we have, we probably should have been called for a few more at this point. And I don't think we've had any. So we don't even know who our penalty taker is. So that'll be fun to find out if it ever does get called for us. But yeah, they're fouls for sure. At least that second one that I saw. But I mean, gotta live with it, I guess. USL things.
Yeah, the first one was clear for me. But yeah, I don't know. Locomotive's about to be the Brighton of USL and just get apologies rather than penalties. So
can't do much with those.
Felt that.
Are these points? Yeah. So I'm glad that we're able to talk about it in jest, because obviously if that game had been equalized at any point, I'd have been absolutely fucking livid that we hadn't been awarded 2 penalties and, you know, had a chance to be out of sight by the time Orange County equalized. But yeah, luckily we don't have to have that conversation, and that's for an alternate version of this podcast to deal with somewhere in the multiverse. But the trend, guys, feels positive. Like, we've got unbeaten in 3 in the league. Should be said, obviously, with the less said about that night in Omaha, maybe the better in terms of what happened on the pitch. We talked about Lucho's goal scoring form. Regardless of the fact that we do need other people to contribute goals, Lucho is always going to be the main man in terms of goal scoring. He grabs his 3rd in 2 league games. Had a brace against Tulsa. had a chance at maybe a brace in this one, but grabs the one. His form in terms of like positive trends, we talked about he needs to get off and running in this season. That brace in Tulsa seems to have lit the fire that he's going to build the base of the rest of the season off of.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm just happy that we're putting together some form finally. So I think the secondary scoring is still like a question mark given Zacarias was kind of hauled off first and maybe didn't have a banner night, even though he's been great recently. So
sure.
Yeah.
Christian, we talked about Benny Diaz's performance. We talked about the saves. Obviously, contributes to keeping a clean sheet. His second with the club, first at home, and he pairs that with a performance against Orange County in terms of his distribution that also was just like a joy to behold. In that we have probably one of the best I would put him up there against anybody in terms of distribution in USL as a goalkeeper, but a guy who looks like he'd be comfortable in Locomotive's midfield as well, between the sticks. So yeah, I mean, any thoughts on Benny's performance and how his form has been looking so far in this young season?
Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic. I think that he's been overlooked because of, the first three results of the season. Over those first three matches, which were 3 games in a week, is one thing to consider. They let in 6 goals over those 3, but I think, all except one were things that he couldn't do much about. They're not errors made by him. And even in those matches, he's made spectacular saves, in almost every match that he's been on the field. So I think it's easy for him to get overlooked, but I think if results stay positive, fans will start recognizing more, the quality that he is back there. And so, once again, we're lucky to have a reliable goalkeeper, and that he's had a pretty good start. Evan Newton last year, rough start, not 100%, on him. There was just, tactical learning curve there. But Diaz luckily has adapted well to coming in with a new coach, to a new team and all that. So big credit to him. And yeah, he's really fun to watch. If sometimes having your heart in your throat is fun for you. But yeah, he's entertaining, and I like him there, and I hope he's able to stick around, because he seems to be a good one there, and arguably, man of the match here. If I know goals, are weighed heavily in terms of who gets recognized after a game, but he for my money is one of the best players on the field on Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, his first half, in terms of just from obviously the 2 saves he makes are huge, but his passing in the first half was on just another level. He only misplaces 4 passes, I think, in the first half out of 24. He ends the night 30 for 43 passing, which is good enough for 70%. Obviously, in the second half, a lot of what would be called long passes, which are more clearances than anything. So maybe a little less focus on completion. But yeah, there's something about his technique and the way that he is able to distribute that is, he creates attacks like on his own. We know that he got an assist against Louisville. Here, like, he launches a couple of counters that turn into dangerous moves for Locomotive. So yeah, he is like 100% part of the team. And I think, to your point, Christian, like, you see a guy who is so comfortable in that modern sweeper keeper, playing the ball with your feet, like, sort of role, where Evan Newton, like, never really looked comfortable in that role. And it wasn't until they kind of let him like eased
Dialed it
off of
back.
that and said like, hey, like shot stop first, and then we'll like take the rest as it comes. It was like, yeah, Benny is obviously, he is more adventurous. He's willing to go out and act as a sweeper, but he does make the decisions like quite well in that it doesn't it just hasn't really led to many situations where Locomotive look out of it, and it's just been the one, Tulsa goal that brought back memories maybe of the ghosts of keepers past, but yes, signs are positive so far for Benny, I think. And we talked about undefeated in the last 3 league games, so we're on a good trend here. We did have a couple of listener questions concerning like where Locomotive are headed. The first from @Yancey1389 on Twitter. With 7 games in the books, have your expectations for the season changed at all? What's been better than you expected, and what concerns do you have that maybe you didn't have before the season? So one, I guess, up in terms of an unexpected thing that's been better than you'd expect, and one thing that's been maybe more concerning than what you thought at the beginning of the season.
My expectations have not changed at all. It's still playoffs or bust. I think that's just like a bare minimum, to be honest. I don't know that Garrett Yancey meant this with his question, but it's what came to my mind, so I'll answer organically. What's been better than expected is actually the fans. And that, I don't mean that to sound backhanded. I just feel like everyone is on board with what's going on right now, and there hasn't been nearly the backlash or like toxicity, and I kind of am like hesitating to use those words because it sounds so much deeper than it is, but I just feel like Brian has really like cultivated like a positive atmosphere around the club, and like people really understand what he's trying to do. I think it's evident, and I think that it's not an accident. I think he's really, really trying, and I think he understands what this job is, what El Paso Locomotive is, and it requires a certain type of man, and he seems like character-wise he could be that kind of talisman that we came to really like in Mark Lowry. So that's been better than expected. It's just like the vibes. Like, yes, the first 3 games were like horrific, but I don't think anyone was like throwing their toys out of the proverbial pram, right? Like, I think we were just like, this is disappointing, but we can see the vision, right?
Right.
So that's what's been better than expected for me. I don't know if that necessarily answers what the listener was asking for, but that's what I feel. Concerns, I mean, just the same things as always. I mean, depth. I think depth is an issue. I think injuries are an issue. I think the scheduling has been absolutely unfair, honestly. I mean, 7 games already in less than a month. It's just like, it's stupid. These are human beings. Like, we've already got one ACL injury in Andrew Herrera. Mark Navarro already afflicted as well. It's dumb.
Yeah.
Brian and his staff not really getting a lot of sleep, traveling a lot, and it's not like these are games that you can just like bus to, it's not like we're in England or France or somewhere where like that's more practical. Like, we live in a big ass country.
Yeah.
So those are concerns that I think just permeate throughout every USL season. So it's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I love that shout about the fans because, I think it is a credit to the core fans of Locomotive for not losing their head, like with 3 successive losses, and it also speaks to like the job that Brian has done to reconnect. And I feel comfortable saying reconnect the fans with the team in a more like, because I think the club and the fans have had a connection in that the fans are going to those hardcore fans are going to show up no matter what, but connecting the fans back to the actual playing and coaching staff, like that took some work, and Brian's done a great job of it. I mean, I share a similar concern. You could point to specific places on the field, but I really do think that and maybe we get onto it in our short Omaha chat, but I think like that demonstrated that, and obviously there's a lot of different things you could talk about with Omaha of saying like that team hasn't really played together and there's a reason that it looks disjointed. I do think it does speak to the fact that there is a drop off from our first team guys to the guys coming off the bench, unfortunately. Like, that's not, again, to like dig any player out or anything like that. It's just we do have a pretty clear kind of preferred or best 11, and then maybe like 4 guys that are on the fringe there, and then it's maybe a little bit steeper of a drop off to the rest of the squad, unfortunately. But I'm sure that's something that, in terms of the depth and what Brian's looking to add to the squad, I'm sure that's being analyzed and being looked at in terms of like what they would like to do to solidify things. But Christian, what about you? What's been better than expected, and what's maybe a new concern?
Better than expected. I think I'm trying to, Mikka's response was just, Mikka's answer is a very good answer, so it's hard to come up with something different than that. But I think, the goal scoring, I think, those first 3 games were rough, 2 goals in 3 games, but between Louisville and Tulsa, multiple goal games, and I think it was just a matter of getting things, clicking. We said that since the beginning of the season. Everything looked good except the goals were not going in. So now the goals are going in, and you just have to hope that trend continues. So once that, I guess, train started rolling, once that started rolling, it's been nice to see that, we've continued. We haven't had a game where we haven't scored, a league game that we haven't scored since the opener, since Sacramento. We're scoring in every match. Yeah. So I think that's important, because that certainly was not the case last year. We were having scoring droughts, and that was leading to, even if they weren't losses, it's leading to points left on the table, which we've seen last year. You leave too many draws, and that'll leave you out in the cold come, September, October. So getting those goals to go in and getting the wins is important. So I'm glad that we've seen that. And I have no different answer, unfortunately, as far as concerns, because I just think it's so obvious and so prevalent. And we've seen that the team has been able to, do well with mid-season signings. Paperwork notwithstanding, for some of them, I can just imagine, if we were able to bring in Mark Navarro last year, it looks like we were supposed to. Mm-hmm. How different the season would have looked with an actual right back. Yeah. So assuming that things go smoothly in that regard, I am confident in the front office ability to supplement the team as the season goes on. So that's concerning for me, but I think that they are capable of fixing that.
Shout out to Harry Brockbank. The streets won't forget. No, Christian, to your point, I did want to shout out another. I know we talked about USL Tactics earlier, but yeah, John Morrissey had put together a chart of graphing out like basically goals scored versus conversion rate. And it was really encouraging for me to see from Locomotive, because Monterey Bay, for whatever reason, Monterey Bay are finishing at a like astronomical level, like far outlier to everybody else.
Well, Tulsa, to be fair, they got to play New Mexico on Saturday.
Very true, and it did warm the heart to see New Mexico get absolutely shellacked. That was
Mikka, what did you say in the? Are you gonna lose to the cosplay of you?
Yeah, man. And they opened the scoring too, so it's just yeah, that's not good. Not good.
But I do love, like, Locomotive is tied for third in goals scored in the league right now. So Tulsa is just above, but then I mean they're level with the likes of Sacramento, San Diego, and Charleston. Locomotive are, but we're finished, like, our conversion rate is worse than 10%. So what I will say is, like, there, that obviously is something that I think there's elements of, like, form, timing, luck, all that stuff that come into converting chances. The reality is that it is reasonable to expect that Locomotive's conversion rate will land somewhere for the season between like 15 and 20%. Like, I think that's fair to say. The fact that we have the third most goals in the league, like, we're tied for third most goals in the league, and we're below 10% conversion rate, if that regresses to the mean, like, we're going to score a boatload of goals. Like, that's the, I think, like, where I'm landing is, like, we, you know, Charleston is, like, in that they're above 15% and level with us. So you would say that they would probably regress. Similarly, I think we'll move up, which in theory lends itself to more goals scored. So anyways, I'm encouraged by the goal scoring as well. You know, in addition to guys gaining confidence, guys like, becoming more consistent, hitting these purple patches. I mean, there's a couple of guys in the team I can think about who go on these, like, little runs of goal scoring. I think we can expect, you know, Josue Gomez will do that at some point this season. And so there's just a lot of things to be encouraged by. So I think that's a great shout. In terms of just kind of our general thoughts too, we got another question at Mark Ponce too on Twitter. What are your thoughts on the new signings at this point of the season, specifically Kostishin, Pavkovich, Petrovic, and Navarro? How are you guys feeling about the deals and the I guess the business the club did in the offseason?
Oh, excellent. To be honest, I think each one of these players has showed their quality early doors and haven't looked like they're completely shocked at the prospect of playing for El Paso and for in USL Championship. I think Kostishin, like, he's like the younger dynamic Dillamar's replacement, clearly. A little bit more pace, a little bit more trickery. Pavkovich, like, he's basically a younger Andrew Fox. I mean, he's slotted in absolutely seamlessly. I think clearly, like, defensively as a unit, we still have some things to improve on, but individually, I think he's been absolutely fine. And Petrovic, we already talked about him, like, set for an explosion. Navarro, like, just got to stay healthy, but when he does play, like, he's probably one of the best crossers in USL Championship. So, yeah, the new signings are very good, and we know that Brian Clarhaut himself had a big hand in all of these because that is also his remit here at El Paso Locomotive, and he talked to us before the season that it's something he's got experience with, and fair play to him because each of these players are doing the business when they're on the pitch.
Yeah, I think all four of those, Navarro, I guess I have to say just because he's been out, but maybe him being the odd man out. But the other three specifically are very good early shouts for, like, all league teams because they are very good at what they do. Kostishin is and Mikka said it since preseason, like, he is that guy. Once he gets going, so I think that these are going to be three names that you continue to hear throughout the season because they're just that good. So very high on those signings, and which is good because we talked a lot last year about how this was still a Mark Lowry team. A year after Lowry had left, and that is not the case anymore, and it's refreshing. I think it's important, to turn that leaf. From the player standpoint, but even from the fan standpoint too. I think that may even be, to talk about what Mikka had said earlier, why, like, even with the rough start, why things have been a little bit more positive, because maybe it's like a psychological thing. Last year, this was still the team that went to the playoffs 3 years in a row, was in the conference finals 2 years, and like, I think in the back of a lot of people's minds, that's still who we were. And so that there was like this dissonance between what we thought we were and what we were seeing on the field. And so now, since it's so different, even when things aren't going swimmingly, people are a little more open to the fact that, okay, this is something new. I have to reanalyze what I thought I knew El Paso Locomotive was. So I'm very glad that these new signings are here, and that they seem to be up to the task.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Christian, in terms of like signing guys who are not only expected to make an impact, but who have come in and had an impact and are starters, are like, they're not sort of guys that we're feeling out. They're not guys that we're giving a shot. They're not, these are the players that are expected to have a first team impact, and barring injury, like, these guys will be in the team all season. That is something that we've not really been able to do, like, since the Lowry years, is like add to the team guys like difference makers in the first team. It's like we've kind of run with this core group, and so now it was really, really refreshing. And I think, I think I'll at least own up to the fact that I was pretty like skeptical of the fact that the club didn't do business to bring in any known quantities, right? Like, like they didn't go get, this guy who is a known quantity at USL level and is going to have an impact, and we know how good he is, like, in this league. But the guys that they went out and got are absolutely, like, up to the task. And I think, I'll go ahead and just say, like, admit that, I was a little bit skeptical of bringing in so many guys from Europe, because we've seen sometimes, like, those players do struggle to adapt. These guys have gotten up to speed quite quickly. It has to be said. And they've been put through an absolute gauntlet in terms of the beginning of this season. And they now get a welcome and deserved respite as they get a full 2 weeks off. But we'll talk about that more, along with a couple of milestones, and we'll talk a little bit about Mikka's trip to Omaha after a short break. Welcome back to Seriously Loco. We did have a couple of big milestones in this one, or at least celebration of milestones, as Josue Gomez and Yuma were both honored after the match with their Centurion jerseys framed, 100 caps, I guess, for Locomotive. We know that Gomez actually surpassed that in terms of total appearances in all competitions quite a while ago. But in terms of regular season USL appearances, both over 100 now. Huge achievement, obviously, at this level when you consider that a lot of guys are on 1-year deals, and now Locomotive have a handful of Centurions, guys who have spent, all 5 years with the club, in Yuma and Gomez. And Gomez's maybe journey a little more unlikely in that he spent the first 3 seasons on loan from FC Juarez. So I mean, just talking about the significance of these guys to not only the team, but now, I mean, these guys are like El Paso Locomotive legends in every sense of the word, and have now been like inextricably linked to not just the club, but like the city of El Paso.
Yeah, it's lovely to see them honored in this way, and I think we've often like kind of criticized the club a little bit for not taking like some of these more sentimental things like seriously, and I think they've made big improvements in that regard. It was really nice to see them present them both with that 100 match kit framed. It looks really nice. They were taking all these pictures and surrounded by their teammates. So that's really cool that we're building like traditions and really honoring, players that are very important to the history of Locomotive. And like you said, Phil, like absolutely Locomotive legends at this point. I mean, you say the word Yuma to anyone in USL Championship, they know who you're talking about, for better or for worse.
And they're triggered immediately.
Absolutely, like piss boiling. But he's our Yuma, so whatever. Josue Aron Gomez, like one of the like silent like leaders in this team. You know, like more of a stoic character, less like I don't know what the word would be. Like he's just more like low key, you know, but he's big. He's a big player, scores lots of goals.
Absolute killer between the lines too. Like, do not get on his bad
does
side.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, just nice to see them both honored. And I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe one of these guys will get to 150. Maybe I think 200 might be a stretch, but you know, they don't look like they're at risk of a retirement anytime soon. So
yeah, I mean, you have to Mikka's point there, you have to imagine that they'll be here as long as they want to be here. They're both still contributing, and you know, they both still have a lot of quality in them, and between them and Chapa, who you know, is significantly delayed in reaching that 100-game mark for injury reasons and stuff. You know, those are the last three. You know, there's no one else who has been here since day one. Well, I guess Gomez hasn't technically been here since day one, but season one,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, you know, it's important that they continue to be recognized for that, because they are just the guys who you see will give everything for the badge when they step out on the field every time. You know, there's no question about, are they up for it? You know, is their head there? You know, it's just important that they continue to get recognized, and you know, it's just been a pleasure to see them, and like Mikka said, hopefully there's a lot more to come from all of them.
Yeah, I think to both of your points, just building that history of the club, and it's something that is kind of lacking in American soccer in general, in that like these sorts of milestones, we always talk about like the deficit of history being such a like knock against American soccer, where it's like, oh, there's all these new teams, and like, you know, whenever you talk with anybody about, oh yeah, well, like we're playing catch up because all these clubs in England have been around for 100 years and blah blah blah. It's like, you know, there was a point in all of these clubs' history where they played their first match, they played their, you know, like all of these milestones occurred, and like someone gave enough of a shit to pay attention and like keep track of it, and that's where these sorts of moments are what build that. And build that feeling and build that connection with the city of like the things happening out here are not, you know, again, it's like the minor league baseball thing where it's like, if you don't take it seriously, then people aren't going to take it seriously. And if you say like, oh, this doesn't matter, like, then people aren't going to care. Whereas like, this is, you know, this is El Paso's team. This is like their, yeah, so like building out the history of Locomotive and turning it into something that people take seriously, like that is what part of this is. And just like yeah, all these like discussion around club records, all that stuff, it is what builds the foundation of that history, so that 20-30 years down the line you're talking about, you know, God willing, like Locomotive are still a thing in 20-30 years, which I know is sad to say because that is like the story of American soccer too. But the reality here is that like you are building those foundations of creating a club that has, you know, a rich history when you take these things seriously. So yeah, it is awesome to see the club pay homage to two guys who have just been awesome, you know, servants of the club and have given everything for it. So
It got so sentimental.
Right. I mean, we gotta get sappy every once in a while. In between, you know, in between roasting the club for various things, we gotta give them their flowers every once in a while. So we did want to talk briefly about, obviously, you know, we had the we didn't have a watch along. We had a watch along for Tulsa. We didn't have a watch along for Omaha because we weren't expecting the club to stream the match, and credit to them, they did get it together and stream the match. But Mikka, I mean, you were there firsthand. You made the trip out to Nebraska, so we want to hear about the experience. We want to hear what I guess, what was it like getting out there? How was the ground? How was the match day experience? All that stuff. Traveling out to League One Omaha.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, even before I went out there, we were very impressed with the way that Union Omaha were so responsive and like seemingly excited to have a traveling journalist, if you will, come cover their club. And obviously there was that link with Dom Casciato, who is now the head coach at Union Omaha, getting one over on his old club, El Paso Locomotive, unfortunately for us. But it was a great time, really was. It was my first time ever going to Omaha, Nebraska. Cool little city for sure. What did I do? The day of the game, I got there around like noon, and I couldn't check into my hotel till like 3, so I was just kind of like putzing around. I went to Old Market, which is like this area of Omaha that is like cobblestone streets and like nice like boutiques and bars and things like that. Had a couple beers, just talked to the locals, and then my hotel was like really conveniently located next to Creighton University. Like everything is really close together there, and the stadium was literally like down the street. So I walked actually. I walked too. I did not walk back because once the sun set, it was freezing. So I don't blame the players or Brian for not wanting to come back out afterwards and talk to me or any of the other journalists that were there. But yeah, the game itself, I mean, obviously we lost 2-0. Union Omaha have history in this competition. Looks like they're poised for yet another run. And we go out in the second round per tradition. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, I suppose. But I still had fun regardless. And yeah, send all my best to the Union Omaha folks. They have a good time for sure. Their announcers, their media people, like they were really, really cool, to be honest.
We got the question from at Der Schattenwolf on Twitter. What are Mikka's impressions of the Omaha travel, which you did just give, but the other question he asked is the loss against Omaha in the Open Cup maybe a blessing in disguise, or are you more sad that the run is over? I don't know if you can call it a run when it's one and done. We haven't had any runs, but I don't know. What do you think? Would you rather we have some time in the Open Cup, or is it more of a blessing to go out?
I mean, listen, it's not going to sound like anything else besides sour grapes, so we'll just leave it at that. But I mean,
copium.
Yeah, we've done nothing but like just be disappointed in this tournament year after year. So, I mean, I don't give a damn about the Open Cup. So that's fine. Brian talked about it in the press conference. They very purposely, made sacrifices in Omaha, and they appeared to pay off on Saturday. So, I'm fine with it. If we're being realistic about it, what you probably know, Phil, what 2 lower league teams have won the U.S. Open Cup, like in the history or something like.
Oh yeah, I mean I guess the last was what, Rochester in '99.
Yeah. So like, yeah. If we're being completely like objective about it, is it gonna happen? Probably not. So why take your chance on that? When even though like our odds of winning the league right now, from whatever statistical analysis you want to give, are probably just slightly better than our odds of winning the Open Cup, but better nonetheless. So why don't you do it in the one that you have a much better shot of doing something meaningful with? So I'm fine with it. I don't think there's any point in making this deep run to lose. So just do what matters, and what matters to me personally is the league.
I think, Mikka, I mean, if it does feel like, obviously, Open Cup, historic competition, I think we wanted to do well in the sense that, like, we are sick of losing to League One teams in the second round because it's just, year after year at this point. But there is something to be said for the fact that Locomotive had played more games than anybody in the country in this opening part of the season. Like, take USL out of it. Like, I don't think there's MLS teams that have played as many games as Locomotive in such a short span of time. And the timing of this Open Cup match, like, could not have been worse from a, like, minute management and that sort of, like, with it being their second 3-game week out of the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe we could, like, have treated it with a bit more seriousness, as it were, if it didn't come smack dab in the middle of 2 league games. We've talked about it ad nauseum at this point. Like, the scheduling has just been absolutely insane. And so, yeah, I think it is a blessing in disguise that we're kind of, like, done and dusted. But yeah, maybe that is some U.S. Open copium. But it is what it is. I still had a good time going out there. Congratulations to Union Omaha. If there's a team that, like, it doesn't necessarily hurt to lose against, it's probably them, because they're very likable for myriad reasons. And best of luck to Dom all the way through. It was his first win as their boss, so that was just a lot of narrative there, actually. So good luck to them the rest of the way through. But yeah, I think Christian hit the nail on the head. Like, the league is what matters, and we've said that as well on this podcast. We're looking to make the playoffs, and the less distractions, the better.
We had gotten a question, or maybe I had just seen, like, would you rather, or when you go out to a team, do you root for them, like, the rest of the way, as, like, your adopted team in the competition, basically? And my answer to that question the last 2 seasons, or the last 2 times Locomotive went out, absolutely not. I was bitter as hell when we went out against Forward Madison, and it was way even worse against Central Valley Fuego.
Fuego was toxic as hell.
I wanted Fuego to be, like, disintegrated after, like, I did not want them to exist after that game. So this one, I do have much more wholesome feelings in the aftermath, and I absolutely, like, I will pull for Omaha, like, going forward, to have another nice cup run. Because I mean, they took down 2 MLS teams last year. They've definitely got some more cup sets in them, as they say. But yeah, I have much more wholesome feelings this year than I did in previous times going out of the competition, because those were both I did not enjoy those, to say the least.
100% agree.
It was Brian Clarhaut has now matched each Locomotive manager's previous record in the Open Cup, 0-1. Because Mark only got 1 chance out of 3 seasons. He only got 1 chance in the Open Cup due to COVID, and then John and Brian both losing their one involvement. So, hey, like I said at the top of the show, I'm a Cubs fan, so there's always next year. And so
now that's what we call toxic positivity,
right? But we did talk about, so the crazy scheduling, all that stuff. It does mean now that rather than, typically this is where we go into the match preview, but we don't really have a match to preview this week, just because Pittsburgh is actually 2 weeks away. So April 22nd will be Locomotive's next match. They get a 2 full weeks off. I guess the first question is, how do you feel about, like, rushing to play all these games and then having this big break? Is it coming at the wrong time in terms of, like, Locomotive finally feel like they're turning the corner and now they've got 2 weeks to kind of think about it before they play Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think in that perspective it's unfortunate, but, like, the guys definitely deserve a break for sure. And I think that it happens to every team at some point. In every season, I feel like every team gets this kind of big stretch of games. I think maybe New Mexico. I think they didn't play their first game until like week 2. And so I think they have a run of like 3 games coming up in the next week or something. So it happens to everyone. It's just unfortunate for us that it happened right at the beginning, because that's when Open Cup happens too. So that just kind of exacerbated things. But I think that they definitely deserve a break, and they've worked hard, and so I think that they come back fresher. I think that a little bit of time to analyze things. Brian mentioned, he's kind of just been going, from game to game, and I would imagine having to like manage like instinctively, because there's no time for analysis when you're playing, 3 or 4 days apart. So I think this break is good tactically. I think that maybe it'll be refreshing as a fan, because we'll maybe get to see some things that we haven't seen before too, because there's time to try new things and to think of those new things. So I'm excited for it. I'm glad that there's a little bit of rest in between things, because I feel like we can get burnt out a little bit too. Not that what we do is necessarily like mentally draining, particularly mentally draining, but because this is like the second most occupying thing in our lives. It's good for us to get a little break too. So I'm excited for us as well.
Mikka, Christian brings up an interesting point in that, compared to Locomotive in the past, where we've kind of talked about like, hey, maybe they're even better when they don't have more time on their hands. Mm-hmm. It does feel like Clarhaut has this team training particularly well, and their ability to focus on like game planning for an opponent has been a positive compared to other seasons where maybe like that time in training has dulled the edge a little bit in terms of that like match approach, match fitness, however you want to like think about it. It does feel like Clarhaut has the team getting the most out of training.
Yeah, getting the most is exactly how I was going to put it. Is he seems to be very efficient with the time that he does have. And actually, like, small anecdote, but when I was coming back from Omaha, I actually was sitting with the team in the departure area. They were actually taking a flight to Denver, and I was taking one to Dallas, but we both ended up in El Paso at like the same time, so whatever. But Brian, John, they were both on their computers doing work, like cutting up video. I feel kind of bad that I was shutting their ears off, but when you see the coach in the airport, it's kind of like captive audience. I'm sorry. No, they were absolutely gentlemen about it. But yeah, no, they work extremely hard and efficiently, as you said. Like, they're really getting the most out of the time that they do get with the players. But Brian was pretty clear that he's going to give the boys a couple days off, and already we're seeing some of the boys like in all parts of the country and the world. So they've earned it for sure. 7 games later, they've definitely earned the right to just get away from football for a little bit and be humans. So
it'll be hopefully a little bit of a chance to recharge the batteries. We'll actually, I think the goal is to come back for a kind of a short preview of Pittsburgh episode, which typically we do the previews as part of this, but Pittsburgh plays a whole game in between now and then. So feels like a little bit of jumping the gun. If we don't, we can do a shorter episode next week that kind of previews Pittsburgh and talks about maybe any news in the interim, like whether it be player availability or anything that happens in the meantime. But with that being said, Pittsburgh, their next game is against RGV at home this Saturday at 7. So with Locomotive not playing, really your only viewing appointment for USL is your scouting preview of Pittsburgh. I do like that they are at home. because they can't try any East Coast shenanigans by traveling to RGV and then staying in Texas all week and playing Locomotive. They've got to make that cross country trip before they play in El Paso. So yeah, happy to see them make that long journey. But we'll see how things turn out against RGV. RGV's been a little bit all over the place in terms of their form so far this season. So yeah, it'll be really interesting. And Pittsburgh is coming off of a 1-0 loss to Switchbacks in Colorado Springs. So yeah, a little bit of spotty form from the Riverhounds. You won't be shocked to find out that they've been involved in a lot of 1-0s, a lot of 1-1s. For anyone who knows Bob Lilly. But anyways, we'll get on to more of a preview in our next episode, which we'll be back for. But it is a little bit of a break before more Locomotive and Locomotive being back at the SWUP to take on Pittsburgh. I guess, is there anything else that we've got? It feels like
you have a write-up for this one coming, tactical analysis.
I do, yeah. So I was on the road this weekend, so I wasn't able to get it typed up yet, but that should be coming either probably tomorrow by Wednesday. It'll be out, I think. But luckily, I feel like I've got a little bit more time to get this one out before it becomes irrelevant. Yeah, so keep an eye out for that. It'll go up on our Patreon first and foremost, and it'll be available for patrons. And if you want to become a patron, just go to patreon.com/seriouslyloco. And yeah, it's $2 a month. If you're interested, you get early access to all the articles, but all the articles do become public after a time. So if you keep an eye out, you will get that. Yeah, and so that'll be the next I guess thing to hold you over in a week without Locomotive football. It is a chance though to catch this Pittsburgh game. I'm trying to think. There's been some really great games even early on in this USL season. A lot of like crazy results. As we mentioned earlier, New Mexico getting swatted. Like, love to see that. Yeah, so definitely make sure you're tuning in to the rest of the league, because there's always good matchups at hand. But yeah, I think that does about do it for us tonight. Thanks everybody for listening in. Be sure to follow, like, subscribe the podcast on whichever platform you prefer. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and keep up with new episodes dropping, all that sort of stuff. And you can get involved and ask questions yourself as well. Yeah, we'll catch you next week for a preview of the Pittsburgh match. But until then, stay loco.